Welcome to Paranormal 411, coming to you from an undisclosed location deep within the Appalachian Mountains, with your hosts David Reagan and Jason Scott, bringing you the unknown. You're listening to Paranormal 411.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing my job, Jason.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Paranormal 411. I'm Jason, and that's David over there.
The guy that forgot to push the buttons.
Yeah. Tonight we got a great show for you. We're going to be talking to Constance Victoria Briggs about some moon anomalies and just anything she wants to talk about.
About her book, The Moon's Galactic History?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It's your turn.
My turn? Man, I'm not here, I guess. If you're looking to find us, you can do that at paranormal411.org. You could also find us at Paranormal 411 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now, also on Saturday nights at 10 p.m., we are on WDJYFM.com. That's WDJYFM.com. We do a 1-hour show at 10 p.m. That'll be tonight, every Saturday night. So we're also on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Join us.
Also, be sure to check out Legends and Lore Pizzeria in Madisonville. Eddie and Susan have some great food and some great stories to tell, right, David?
Oh, yeah. Eddie and Susan, they're great. They own the place, and the whole place is themed with all kinds of cool stuff. And the pizza, the food itself is good, but, Eddie does ghost hunting and Bigfoot and everything else. So he has tons of stories.
Right. And also, we want to thank the band Catalyst of East Tennessee for letting us use their music. You can find them at Band Labs to hear all their great songs.
You can also come to our website, paranormal411.org, and right on the front page, you could see their link that we've got up there for them. You click on that, and it goes right to their Band Labs page.
Oh, yeah.
So all you have to do is go to Paranormal 411.
Yep.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
So we're live on Spreaker and our website at paranormal411.org.
Yep. Also live on Facebook,
and YouTube
Yep.
and Twitter.
Man, you just got us everywhere, Jason.
Got it everywhere. So, like I said, we got Constance Victoria Briggs. She is an author, researcher, and public speaker specializing in cosmic mysteries, including galactic and moon mysteries.
That's going to be fun.
Yes. Ancient astronauts, extraterrestrials, angels, and the unseen world. She's the author of The Moon's Galactic History. And that's a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past, its connection to Earth, the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, Secrets, Conspiracies, Anomalies, Extraterrestrials, and More. Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, the ultimate guide to apparitions, deathbed visions, mediums, shadow people, wandering spirits.
We like shadow people stories.
Yes, we do. We like shadow people. She's got a whole list of books. She can probably tell you more about them. But we're going to be talking about the moon tonight. So we're going to go ahead and bring her on.
All right.
Hey.
How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. So how did you get into writing about the moon?
Yeah, so you know what? I started this whole writing business. I started out with metaphysics and talking and writing about the unseen world. And when you're doing that kind of work, a lot of different research and stories, come by your desk, at least mine. It's getting all kinds of interesting information. And one of them was about the moon. Um, I had no idea, like almost like the whole world, that there was something going on with the moon. And I would see these little glimpses of stories, and I just started filing them. They were so interesting. And it was one little book in particular that really got me thinking about going deeper in the research and actually putting a book together. So this book was by a ufologist by the name of Don Wilson. He wrote two books, the first being Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, and then he wrote Secrets to Our Spaceship Moon. And that little book had all these little uh, anomalies, that were going on with the moon that he knew back in the 70s, and he talked a lot about some of the especially the Apollo astronauts he talked about. And I thought, there's more to this than I think. So from there, it was really Don Wilson's little book and the little stories going past my desk that really got me thinking about moon mysteries. And at first, it started off at something, really kind of fun and interesting, but then, it took a more serious turn with me. And so that's how I began. I talk a lot, so just jump in anytime.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
That's what we like.
This is your show. We're just here to listen.
So I decided, that people needed to hear some of this. I mean, we had pioneers in the 70s that did some awesome writing about their thoughts of mysteries on the moon, although they didn't title it that. They talked about things like structures on the moon. I'm talking about Richard Hoagland, which you may have heard of,
Oh,
Mike
yes.
Barra. They wrote some great information. But I think along the lines, people, as they will, just the conversation started to decline a
Mm.
little bit, because when I would talk to people, it was news to them, and I just thought people need to start hearing this information again. We need to keep the conversation going. There has been more discovered since that time till now. And my information doesn't just cover moon structures, it covers a whole range of things that hasn't been talked about before. So, anyway, I thought I would just make it easy for people who wanted to do research, and I'd write an encyclopedia. That was my specialty, encyclopedias from A to Z, you know. So I wrote the Moon Mysteries book. You could look up astronauts, what they experienced. You could look up craters on the moon, just A to Z of whatever information you may have, had an inkling towards.
Mhm.
But and I talked about it a great deal for a couple of years. That book was, a little popular, but then people wanted something deeper, so I wrote a narrative, and that's how I got to the moon's galactic history, where I just went all out and gave my thoughts, ideas, opinions of what I think is going on with the moon.
No, that's
That's
awesome. Oh, I'm sorry.
now that was my
Um,
start.
oh, no, that's awesome because I find it pretty fascinating too because they see all kinds of little structures and stuff that you could see on the moon, and with the Chinese that have just gone up there, they talk about these microspherules that are all over the place, on the moon and stuff, and they've got water inside of them. And then you have all the bridge that people talk about seeing up there, and the tower and all these other things, and it makes you think, hopefully it's not pareidolia. um
No.
but for me, it looks like when you see those pictures, it's like that's what that's exactly what that looks like.
Yes, and what's interesting about the structures is if you really delve deep into what's going on up there, not only do they not look like something from our imagination,
Mhm.
there looks like there's a couple of different aspects to it. We're looking at structures up there that seem to be ancient, and we're looking at some that seems to be more modern. Now, if I talk about the structures that are the ancient ones, these are the ones that were, excuse me, uh, talked about in a few books in the past, and they have columns, and there were some, a couple of pyramids that match the Great Pyramids of Egypt almost. There's something up there that looks like it could have been it could be a sphinx. And then there's other buildings that look like they were bombed.
Hmm.
Some
Wow.
of those some of those structures looks like, there's just parts of them. We know they couldn't just kind of deteriorate up there. They would be standing. It looks like there was some kind of war up there that hit those things. So we're looking at partial structures. And then on the other hand, we have what looks like buildings and roads up there now
Mhm.
that more recent astronauts have gone on and found, and on Google Earth and stuff, and and they've got astronomers that have taken pictures. So it looks like someone is there. It's not all our imagination when we're looking at something. You can tell when there's a structure. Now, what were the structures that have been found? Like I said, there were pyramids. There's a group of pyramids that was found back in, I think it was the 70s, and they are positioned in a uniform way where these things just didn't grow out of the ground. They were placed in a configuration. Um, we have what looks like areas that looks like they had some mining equipment or something, but these are partial structures, but it looks like an area that was being mined. We have um, dome-like structures that have been found. Domes, which is weird, lighted domes have been talked about popping up on the lunar surface that cannot, be explained. But for me, the fact that they're lighted, of course, says there's some sort of energy source going on.
Right.
And, could there be someone below the surface of the moon with energy, that we're seeing in those lighted domes? It's very weird.
Yeah.
Um, the astronauts talked about a crystalline structure. There's one that has the name of a castle. It's shaped like a castle. There are towers shooting up from the surface of the moon that go on for miles and miles and miles.
Hmm.
You know,
Wow.
it looks like someone placed those there. Someone is up there.
Right. Do you think that that there's still maybe something there as far as living inside the moon? You think? Because I know there's a lot of people that talk about seeing things flying in and out of the moon and stuff like that. And I know when that some of the Apollo missions went up, they talked about seeing things there. And do you think that things are still there? Like it's maybe a place to watch us from?
So, in my book, I have a lot of scenarios of what can be going on up there. Um, One of them I call, well, hmm, I don't know. This is such a complicated thing. I don't know which way to start to get into, but one of them I refer to as the duck blind theory.
Mhm.
That they could be using the moon. That this thing is an artificial structure designed to look like a moon, but they're actually, for whatever reason, watching Earth.
Mhm.
Earth apparently is a very, very popular place to to
Yes.
watch and visit for whatever reason. There's a whole lot of talk about all kinds of extraterrestrials interested in Earth for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the moon, the theory is that there is someone there, but who are they? Are they extraterrestrials that are watching us, taking notes,
Mhm.
sending information back to someone else out in the cosmos? Are they on the moon watching all of the galaxy, the area in our solar system,
Mhm.
taking notes and reporting back? And if so, why? There is a theory that it is a kind of a base station for that reason. Um, let's see. There's a theory that the moon is a way station for ships coming in and doing their business before they leave to fly off somewhere else. It's a theory that the moon is home and have extraterrestrials that have been on the moon from the beginning, and that's kind of who I think it is.
Mhm.
Let's see. So, well, those are some of the theories. Um, what they're doing up there, we have no idea. Now, when you go back, I know we're probably going to get into the origin of the moon, and I could probably tie this in a little bit if I can talk about the
Yes,
origin of the
ma'am.
moon.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So basically, the scientists don't know how the moon came to be. They don't know how we got the moon. The moon is too big,
Mhm.
really, to be a natural moon.
Mhm.
If it's any, if they're saying, and there's more and more people getting on board with this theory that the moon is artificial. I grew up thinking that the moon had been captured in
Yep.
Earth's gravity, and now, I get to adulthood and I'm hearing that that's not the case at all. I'm like, okay, well, what is the case? What is it?
Yeah.
Right? Did
Yeah.
you hear that, guys? Is that what
Yes.
you thought growing
Yep.
up?
Yeah. The same thing. Yep. And then I'm a real history buff, so I grew up hearing what you were just talking about it was captured, whether it was a comet or part of comet or something like that. It was captured, and then they started talking about how it was another planet that come in and smacked the side of the Earth, and then it all coalesced. And but
Hmm.
then but then scientists started saying that that can't be because when they went to the moon, and they collected samples, there was no earth minerals on there, which there would have been earth minerals on the moon if it would have, coalesced and been part, the two planets really be part of the same planet. So I don't know. I think they don't know.
They don't know. And
Yeah.
if you go to NASA's website, it pretty much says what the theory that you just gave. Some call it the big whack theory. Um, uh, but they said, that's how we think it came to be. That's how
Right.
we think what we think the origin is. It's not definitive.
Right.
And it's very interesting because I was listening to a show the other night on Netflix with Morgan Freeman, who was narrating this, and I can't remember the name of it, but he was saying, like it was a fact, that this planet had smacked into Earth, and that's how the moon came. And I'm thinking, no, 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 no.
That's a
That's
theory.
not a fact. That's a theory. Just
Yes.
like some people think the Big Bang theory, even though it's you hear theory in there, they still say
Yeah.
the Big Bang is how everything came to be. No, 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 it's a theory.
Yep.
Which it's a theory, guys.
Yep.
So anyway, so how did the moon came to be? Come to be. I think that as as a planet, as people on this planet, we should be having these ongoing conversations,
Hmm.
trying to figure out what's what. We don't have to leave it to the scientists. We don't have to leave it to the governments. We
Hmm.
can think, we
Yep.
can research, we can ask. So, interesting story here. As we were talking about before, the minerals and things, there were a couple of scientists from the Soviet Union back in the late 70s that wrote a paper about what they think the moon is and how it came to be here. And these scientists worked for the Soviet government and they put their reputations on the line coming out with this information. So what they did was took the NASA data from the Apollo astronauts and investigated it, and they looked at the fact that the craters on the moon are shallow, that no matter how hard the impact on the moon is from a meteor, The craters are still around 2.5 miles. And that shouldn't be, of course. Some should be deeper than the other. They thought that was very strange. They said that it looks like from looking at the elements that the moon is made up from, that it's made up of these elements that someone would use to make a really hard surface and to make a ship that they wouldn't want to damage, that it could withstand being bombarded and it could stand heat and everything. That's what it looked like. And so they examined all of this about the moon, and their conclusion from the scientists was that this is a created product. It is an artificial satellite that was not created in our galaxy. It was created outside, and that it was filled with things like they said engines and technology and things that people would need to live for a long time as they were traveling through the universe and placed here. So they thought that there were people inside this thing that left a place and drove across the universe. Some say it was placed in a comet, but was placed in Earth's vicinity purposely for a reason. So if that is the case and they are correct, then that means that there were beings inside of, not only did beings make this thing, but they may have been inside of it, if you listen to these scientists, and what happened to them once they reached Earth's vicinity? Did they leave the moon and go to Mars or Earth? Did they stay on the moon? You know, is there a civilization inside of there? Okay, so I'll continue. You don't have a
Yes,
question.
yes, no, no, yeah.
I do. I
Oh,
do.
Jason does.
So I've
Yeah.
heard of stories.
Yeah.
David, I know, has heard them too about the time before the moon, like old legends.
Yeah.
That
Yep, the Dogons, I think, have
yes.
a theory about
Mhm.
it. There's some ancient philosophers too that talk about the time before the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, sure. Yeah, I'll get into that. Because along this train of thought that I have,
Yep.
That fits in really nicely. Um, so there was. I'll get back. Just let me get back to that one
Yes.
second. So what was interesting about this Soviet scientist story kind of ties in with that, because there was a story from the Zulu people out of South Africa, an ancient tale that says that in their legend, the moon was created by I shouldn't say reptilian beings, but by these beings that were scaly, and they looked kind of like, I guess, reptilian like, but they were, two brothers in this tale. And it said that this egg, they called it an egg in the legend, that this egg was hollowed out, and that these two brothers, let's just say extraterrestrial people,
Mhm.
created this thing and sent it across the universe, and that's how it came to get here. And what's interesting is it sounds so much like what the Russian scientists theorized.
Yeah.
I don't think they were copying the Zulu people, they were
Right.
professional scientific people. But
Right.
it's interesting that it ties in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at that and then you go back to what you were just saying, um, there was a time which is shocking, and some people just, don't buy into it. But there was a time, according to ancient philosophers and ancient writers who wrote about it a little bit,
Mhm.
that there was no moon in the sky.
Yep.
They said that Venus was the shiniest object in the night sky. And they wrote about a people that lived during that time that were the called the Arcadians, and that they were wild in the land. They were feral people who were living, running naked in the land and eating, just like the cavemen. I guess we would kind of picture them, but it sounded more like they were, more human, but just wild. And that they lived during that time before the moon, and that was the time before the god Jupiter was believed in. So we're going back to the beginning, if not before the cradle of civilization, talking about there being no moon in the sky. So what's interesting with that, the Soviet scientists and the Zulu people, is that there is a sun gate out of Bolivia uh, that is an ancient struct. We call it the Sun Gate because it is a door. So it's a gate, or you can say gate or door, and it is located inside of a monolith uh, that has symbols around this feature. So this was a building, but the doorway is still standing, and it has symbols that talk about a time when there was no moon in the sky, and when it talks about when the moon came in, and it says that there were storms and natural disasters because of the moon, you know because of the mass. It created problems on the earth, but when the problems, the storms and things settled, the earth, and it goes into details about the length of days being different and everything, but the earth was apparently more steady
Mhm.
and could better hold life. Life could thrive here. So if you look at all of that, it's interesting that it kind of all ties in. Now, I'm not a dictator saying this is how it is.
Right.
I'm saying that these are some of what the interesting stories say. And
Right.
if you look at the Zulu people, and you're talking about the Dogon,
Yep. The
these are
doggone stuff.
I'm gonna, yeah, these are people that
Yeah.
were approached by extraterrestrials in the
Yes.
past, and those extraterrestrials that approached them looked like, some kind of reptilian being too.
Yep. And that's the same thing in ancient Mesopotamia too. When you start talking about their creation stories and myths and stuff, where um, the Enlil and them came down, and a lot of them talk about that stuff as far as them being reptilian in nature, also. So you see it in a lot of the ancient cultures and stuff where they talk about these reptilian beings,
Yeah,
and it's kind of neat. You even get it in some of the old Hopi Indian legends and stuff too.
yeah, very knowledgeable people.
Yeah. What's funny is that and I'm sitting here saying legends and all this other stuff, but that's the way most people see it. They don't look at it and then look at all the evidence of that all these different people that had no contact with each other. How are they telling the same story?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And here we are in the modern day saying we don't know how it came.
yeah,
So even that one thought ties into all of that, because we are not trained to look at other people's uh, legends. We've been taught that those things are myth and
yes,
imagination and tales. It's
yes,
very sad, you
yes.
know.
It is. It is. Yeah, I mean, because when it comes to those stories, a lot of those haven't been scrubbed like a lot of the ones that we hear. A lot of those haven't been washed out as much. People just these people are talking some crazy. They're on peyote or something, but I mean, seriously, they want to make excuses, but it's just weird how you start listening to them, and it goes down to a lot of stuff when they start talking about the plant medicines and different things like that. Uh, you know, do a heck of a lot better than anything you'll buy at the drugstore, and they want to say the same thing about it. I mean, if they're not lying about one, they're not lying about the other. I think that it's not myth, none
I
of it.
agree. I agree. Yep. So I think that we need to, kind of open our minds and look at, some of the ancient writings out there, because there could be a lot of information that we could use in today. And I think we need to know who we are, where
Mhm.
we came from, our galactic history, because we're being visited. We always have been, but
Yes.
today people are seeing it more and more. And don't you want to know who they are?
Yes. And their agenda, right?
Right,
Why?
right.
Why are you here?
I've seen photos of what looks like fleets of UFOs flying away from the moon, and I think, where are they going? Are they
Yeah.
coming to Earth? Where are they
Yes.
going? That's a lot of them, and you can see. I don't know if you've seen them, but there are videos of what looks like saucer ships going into crevices of the moon
Mhm.
and coming out, flying out. Where are they going? And why are people saying, you still get people saying, oh, there's no one on the moon. Nothing's going on in the moon.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on up there.
Yeah, I've seen, some, amateur astronomer videos that they were videoing, and you could see, in formation, multiple ships coming off the moon and then flying away, and then them start to break off one at a time, and they're like, "Oh, no, that's just debris." It's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, they were flying in formation." Sure, debris does that.
Maybe people can't handle the truth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we go back in history, this really is not a modern day thing when it comes to moon anomalies. People think that we are just beginning to see UFOs and to talk about extraterrestrials. Well, I'm afraid not. This has been going on since ancient times.
Mhm.
All right. But if we just go back to the astronomers, when they first when Galileo first put forward the telescope, they were seeing things on the moon then. Did you know that? They were seeing things going on the moon.
Really?
And it was considered scientific fact that there was someone living on the moon. Scientific fact.
Wow.
And they were seeing at that time strange lights. And they only said lights, they never said ships. They didn't have that whole idea of, I guess, spaceships. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they would say, oh, there's strange lights moving across the moon. Oh, we saw some kind of animal moving across the moon. Oh, there was all kind of movements. Oh, we saw uh, fog on the moon. There's mist on the moon. There's things moving on the moon. All
Hmm.
right. And not only that, but from way back to that time, um, mu- the British Astronomical Museum, I think that's the name of it, they were keeping track of all of these reports from the astronomers from way back then. Yes,
Wow.
NASA, NASA knew too. All right. So from that point up until the 60s, they were writing this stuff down. And the astronomers would be like, yeah, I saw a red light move across the surface of the moon for 2 hours, and they
Wow.
would give the name of the scientist. One guy saw what he said, where he thought maybe like a flock of insects or something. Yeah, these black things were moving, this flock, and they were going like 8 miles an hour. And you've got his name and you've got the time and all of this stuff. Oh, we saw four uh, triangle shaped black. I'm just throwing things out there for the,
Right.
like, for example, black lights hovering above the uh, Copernicus crater or something for 1 hour. I mean, they were so detailed.
Wow.
So what happened is, when NASA was created and they got the idea of sending men to the moon, they had somehow they came across this information, or they had their own astronomers, writing down information. They knew something was up. So they created, and I don't have it in front of, oh, yes, I do. They created this little book, and it's called the NASA Lunar Technical Report. All right, and what I was telling you, it has these information from all of these astronomers going back to the 1600s, and
Wow.
so they created this. It was classified at the time. They wanted to know what the heck was going on up
Mm.
there. They wanted to send men up there. They maybe they needed to figure this out, right? So
Right.
they so they put this together and they did their little investigation and they still sent people up. I'm actually very surprised at that.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah.
surprised.
I wonder if when they sent the astronauts up, if they debriefed them and said, "Hey, look, there may be, something up there," and report back if so, because
I th-
or if they just sent them up there just to see if they would find anything, uh, which they probably would do, right? Just send them up there and say, "Well, let's see what they say."
I think you're right. I think all of that is right. I think they once they found out there may have been someone on the moon, or they wanted to find out what's going on the moon, and B, they pretty much, I think, knew someone was up there. It's interesting because our scientists came out. I told you about the astronomers
Mhm.
who said they were seeing things, and it was a scientific fact. Well, our astronomers came out later and said, no, 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 nothing can live on the moon. Nothing can live on the moon. Nothing can exist on the moon. That's not science. But they never explained all of the stuff that was going on up there. If
Yeah,
nothing can be there and live there, then who's causing all that commotion?
right.
Now, was that to throw us off, guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do the same thing about, Mars because, um, it came out with Mars where, they've always put these red filters on Mars, and it's come out that it's filters, that Mars is not a red planet. It's not all red. And now you can start seeing pictures of Mars, from the lunar rovers and all this stuff, and they're no longer red. They don't mark out the red anymore. You can see blue skies.
Oh, no kidding.
It's actually got an atmosphere. You can see blue skies and everything like that. Yeah, and colorations on the rocks and stuff like that. But they admitted that they were adding a red filter to it
mm.
to make it red. Yeah. Yep.
Really?
Yep. Yep.
Well, that explains a lot, huh?
Yes, it does. It does. Yep. But it's funny because you can actually see blue skies in the backgrounds of it. Yeah.
Wow.
So they lie to us, every time they can, every opportunity. I believe
Yeah.
that for sure.
But why? What is the end result
Yeah.
to that kind of a cover up to that extent?
Right.
Um, I don't know. I don't know, but there's something that they don't want us to know, I guess. And I don't
Absolutely.
know that that's all about extraterrestrials. It could be something else going on that they don't want us to know. And I tell you something else, it may not be the governments at all. It may be the extraterrestrials
Right.
themselves that don't want us to know some information. And that's just a theory.
Right.
I think sometimes.
Well, for me, I think that it could be like what you was talking about earlier. Um, we've lost a lot of our history. We only know a very little piece of our history as humans on this planet. And I think that that's the biggest cover up, is that maybe these places on the moon, on Mars, these places actually have proof of who we were before we've lost our memory. I think that's, a very good possibility. Again, that's a theory, but I think it's a pretty good one.
I talk about that actually in my book. I talk about how we are a uh, civilization that have a lot lost our way, lost our memory for a variety of reasons
Yep.
too. I
Yep.
mean, uh, boy, I mean, this gets so complicated. But for number one, there have been several disasters on the earth,
Yep.
and there is talk of us having to have started over several times.
Yep. The Hopi says 4. I think the Hopis have said that we're living in the 4th age or something. So, yep.
Yeah, so if that's the case, you've got these gaps.
Mhm.
Things are washed away, disintegrated, destroyed.
Mhm.
The Library of Alexandria is thought to have had a great deal of information before it burned down.
Yep.
And a lot of the information is believed to have been lost there. And there was probably, because at that time, people were coming from all over, the known world at that time. And when they would come to the area where the library was, they would leave a copy of their book, whatever books they had, or it was duplicated, um, which of course would have been a hard thing to do, but they tried their best to duplicate the information. And there may have been information in there about extraterrestrial connection and
Mhm.
extraterrestrial people and beings that were actually residing on Earth
Mhm.
during those times. I mean, we're getting into a whole other topic, really, but we lost maybe a lot of our information about our history when that library burned down, and also for whomever may not want us to know. When what's his name? I think his name is. Oh, and I may be wrong, but it may be Hamim Eshed, something like that.
Mhm.
He was a uh, Israeli officer, and he was in the news about, I don't know, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. He wrote a book, and he had a very good reputation. He was well known, he was well thought of, and he's an old man now. And he wrote this book about his life, and he talked about his what he knows about, I guess, our galactic history a little bit. He talked about Mars. I haven't read the book because they don't have it in English. I wish they would publish this thing in English. But anyway, what he said is that there are humans on Mars working alongside extraterrestrials in an organization that they call the Galactic Federation.
Mhm.
When I heard this, because I've heard the Galactic Federation 30 years ago, I was
Yes.
in my kitchen cooking and I kind of spun around and I couldn't believe it. And I told my family, who really doesn't know anything about this anyway. I mean,
Right.
I talk, it's like one ear out the other, right? But
Right.
it's not their thing. But I
Yeah.
said, oh my God, I can't believe they outed the Galactic Federation. You never hear that name on the mainstream.
Yeah.
But
They
my point,
roasted the guy for that too. I mean, they didn't have a very good, very anything very good to say, because I remember when he came out about it, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, man, has this guy lost his mind?" I mean, you know, but, I mean,
no,
now with the stuff that we're even talking about in our Congress and everything with the UAP task force and all this stuff, I mean, the stigma is starting to kinda dwindle on the UFO topic and these things, and so maybe we could start actually, making some headway and getting some scientists on board to actually start looking into these things maybe.
I think some of them are getting on board. I think people are taking it more seriously. And I think the ones that were in the closet, the galactic closet,
Mhm.
are coming out. And there are some groups being formed to maybe study up on things and try to get some answers to things, because it's really important, because people are seeing more and more UFOs in the sky all the time, and you can't really hide it anymore because everyone has a camera on their phone.
Yes.
So try to say they don't exist. I mean, I have people telling me I saw them. Constance, go to Sedona. You
Yes.
see them all over Sedona. Go to Torrey Pine. I live, in California. They're like, go to Torrey Pines Beach. You can see them. We're seeing them. I mean, you can't hide it. So you're going to have to, uh, have scientists, I think, get on board. There was one scientist who came out and said, and I hate to try to say his name, Is it Michio?
Michio Kaku.
Michio. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. I don't want people to text and slam. Oh boy, she can't say any names.
That's okay. Hey, you know
Anyway,
what? We're the same way. Sometimes we're like, we're about to butcher this, but here it goes.
right? But he came out and said that it's more. How did he put this? He said basically it used to be that ufologists had to prove that UFOs and extraterrestrials or whatever didn't exist, but now it's more on the scientists and those guys to prove that they don't
Yes.
because they're being seen. I hope I said that right.
Mhm.
On the playback, we'll know.
You
Um,
did. Yeah, you did.
because they're seeing, just so many things out there. And I'll have to tell you something else. When you're a researcher and you're delving deep into things, it's amazing what comes across, like my desk, and you can compare things. For example, for the moon, I had astronomer out of Germany send me some pictures that people were sending him in different parts of the world of this image. It looked like a large black bird in front of the moon. It was some kind of anomaly or UFO or whatever. But what's interesting is that several people saw it in different places of the world,
Wow.
right? So this person standing in the US photographing this has no idea that someone else may have seen the same kind of thing somewhere else. And, but, I could see it
Yeah.
altogether,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird and interesting. And I'll tell you another thing that I saw recently was this one lady, two different people. This one lady in the US said, did I photograph an extraterrestrial? And in her picture, you could clearly see a little green person, literally green, with the big head. And I think he must have been maybe, I don't know, it's hard to say on that film, 2 to 4 feet, I guess, something like that. And he was walking this little thing. And else I saw at a different place was saying the kind of the same thing. Is that an alien? Did I get a picture of it? Is that an alien? And I'm looking at these two pictures thinking, this is the same thing, but they're different, two different places.
Right.
So for people who want to say, oh, this person made it up, oh, that's not true. As a researcher, sometimes you get more information. It's like I'm like, I don't think that they're connected. I don't
Yeah.
think they're calling each other and saying, let's make this up and then post it, you
Right.
know. So there are things being seen out there, is my point,
Mhm.
and we need more information. And it would be nice if, the scientists would get on board. We
Yes.
didn't have this technology before for us to be able to see all these things that we are.
Right.
And it is, I think, important for us to know what in the world is happening.
Yes.
Um, Shoot, there was some. Oh, I told you about the big bird on the moon. Yeah, or whatever that was. So
Have you been keeping up with what's going on in Mexico?
I have. You know, I don't know if I have all the information because I do spend a lot of time in the last few weeks writing this book. But some people are saying that it's fabricated, and some people are saying that it isn't. What do you think?
I don't know. I know that they were originally found in 2017, I think, is when
In
they was
Peru.
originally found. And but supposedly when they came out in this press conference,
Hmm.
and I haven't watched all the press conference, so I can't say exactly, but I do know kind of some highlights that they supposedly said that they have been x-rayed.
Hmm.
They talk about internal body structures and different things. And
Right.
they talk about some DNA studies that have already been done, and that 30% of the DNA is not human. It's unknown, completely unknown.
Hmm.
And they're also opening up to anyone in the world that wants to come study these things, that they said that they'll let them come down and study them. So I don't know. It's kind of neat.
I think that's really cool, and I'm glad you're giving all the scientific stuff because I don't do it very well. I looked at a post this morning saying exactly what you just said, and I posted it on Facebook, and I said, "So what do you think? Do you think it's fabricated?" But I don't think it's fabricated.
Hmm.
I think try to debunk everything. You've got someone saying, "Look, this is the internal structure of these beings." How
Hmm.
many people, you know, would fabricate to that
Right.
degree, and they come and look at it? Come on,
Yeah. Yeah.
real?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, yeah, I fabricated this. Now I'm going to waste your time by making you come down here and look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Well,
Yeah.
right?
they've been carbon dated. They've been DNA tested,
Hmm.
and there's some kind of organic creature because they
Yeah.
got DNA.
Right.
As you guys said, they got two of them.
Yeah. There's two
Yeah,
of them.
there's
Yeah.
two. They don't look when you look at the pictures, they look kind of weird,
Well,
but
they're corpses, you
Yeah.
know.
right.
Right. Yeah.
I
Um,
kind of
So,
think it's real too. I mean, that's where I'm going with it.
yeah. I'd definitely like to see other scientists come in and do some testing and stuff on it and get, a broader spectrum of, yeah, these people corroborate what they said, I'd like to see that.
and
So,
we may, because the other countries do not seem to be as secretive as the United States.
yes.
Okay, and like I said, either the governments are hiding something, or the extraterrestrials themselves may have an agenda and
Mhm.
don't want us to know yet themselves. Because I didn't finish my story. When the Israeli gentleman said that the extraterrestrials were working with humans on the moon, they were told not to tell us because we're not ready. Did you hear that part of it back
Uh,
then? Yeah, they said, don't tell them they're not ready. Humanity is not ready. So it could be, we might be blaming the US government, but it could be them. Maybe
yeah.
they don't want us to know yet, or maybe they have some sort of agenda, or maybe they're trying to slowly acclimate us, to the point, that we accept that we're not alone in the universe, which I believe we are not.
Yes.
I believe there is a galactic community, and we have not just the moon. All right, there have been different shapes and sizes of ships on the moon. By the way, if we back to that really quick, there
Yes.
there was someone who wrote about having seen what they thought was a mothership. That there was this huge ship over the moon they saw, and there have been triangle ships near there, cylinder ships there and near Earth. For the most part, they have been disc shaped near
Mhm.
the moon. The ones going in and out of the crevices up there are disc shaped, but others have reported different shapes. So, what I'm trying to say is, I kind of feel like there are different groups of extraterrestrials with
Mhm.
different um, with different types of ships,
Yes.
and that's why they're saying don't tell us. They may have an agenda because it's not just one group; it's several groups of extraterrestrials that are visiting Earth, and they may be so advanced that they have some sort of directive. Okay, we are visiting this planet. We're visiting their moon we're visiting, wherever else, but maybe they don't tell the natives all the time of that planet until they're ready, just like in Star Trek.
Yeah. Prime directive, right? They have a prime directive like Star Trek where they don't want contact or to mess with the civilization until they're ready.
Right.
Yeah.
So they come in. They come in disguised. They come in a some kind of what do you call it? Camouflage, or when
Mhm.
you disappear, cloaked,
Cloaked.
or just like we've been seeing now. I know I've gotten away from the moon here. I'll try to get back to it as I can. But, so what's interesting about this conversation that we're having is Gene Roddenberry.
Yes.
Gene Roddenberry, as most people know, created Star Trek. I guess you may have heard the stories of Roddenberry sitting in on channeling sessions.
No.
Okay, so all right. So Gene Roddenberry was sitting in on channeling sessions with a woman who said that she was receiving information from a group of beings that are in space in a ship, and they're trying to work with Earth and other parts of the galaxy, that they're here to help. And they were the Galactic Federation.
Wow.
And on this ship, according to this woman's information that she was getting via telepathy, they told her there are different groups of extraterrestrials on this ship, and we work together. And Gene Roddenberry was sitting in on all of this. And the idea is that he used that information to create Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
Now, why would that be a thing? Because the theory is that extraterrestrials may be using science fiction to educate people about space, about beings in outer space, so that we would get interested to the idea of seeing them and hearing about it until the point where we're ready to be approached. That's the theory behind Gene Roddenberry, that he may have been selected, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he wouldn't know. We don't know. When you come in here and you have some kind of mission, you don't always know. But it certainly looks that way, because I've heard more than once that that is most likely a way that advanced beings are trying to reach us, to let us know that we're part of a galactic community. And I think they need to hurry up, because there's a lot of people seeing not only ships, but they're talking about seeing strange creatures walking around. I don't know if you guys, well, you do a paranormal show. There's all kinds of strange creatures walking around. And some people are having PTSD about it and going to therapy. And if you tell your neighbor next door, probably they're going to go, yeah, you're sure right. But you have to be involved in this research to know that, right?
Yes. I mean, you have, what was it, just a month or so ago? The
Crash.
the UFO crash and everything that was in Nevada, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nevada or
Las Vegas. And then they actually called the cops, and even the cop was like, yeah, this is freaking me out.
See it, don't call me.
Yeah. He's like, don't call me no more. So I mean,
Right.
it's crazy that when you're actually, you see something and you call 911, or like, hey, there's an alien in my backyard, and they saw
It's actually seen that alien twice.
Yeah.
I mean, it came out and they seen him no more than, like, I don't know, 20 feet from them.
Right.
Then it disappeared.
Yeah.
Then it came back.
Yeah. And well, then the cops and everything also saw what they thought was a plane crashing or whatever it was too. So yeah, I mean, you've got all kinds of stuff going on.
So, are you ready for a break?
Yeah. I need something to drink.
Yes.
Okay.
It's water time.
Yeah.
When we come back, I'd like to get into the Apollo ordeal about it. I've heard stories and heard like transmissions from that was supposedly on a different channel.
Yeah, where they switched over to the secure line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we'll be back here just 3 or 4 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. We're talking with Constance Victoria Briggs. We're talking, well, I guess we're talking about a bunch of stuff, but one of her books, The Moon's Galactic History. Remember, we have a book out too. You can find it on Amazon. Search for East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore. The name is East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore.
Yes.
And if you're looking to find us, you can do that at paranormal411.org, Paranormal411 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And tonight, every Saturday at 10 p.m., you can find us on WDJY-FM. You go to WDJYFM.com and listen to us. And we're also on all your favorite podcast platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Join us. And we'll be back after this. We'll be talking again with Constance.
Yes.
So
We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Eddie from Legends and Lore Pizzeria in Madisonville, Tennessee. Cool little pizza shop with a paranormal and cryptid theme. Just voted best pizza in Monroe County. Follow us on Facebook at Legends and Lore Pizzeria to get the latest updates and hours, specials, and new menu items.
thanks for listening to the show. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Paranormal411. Join us on the website at paranormal411.org. It's free to sign up and become a member. All of our upcoming shows are on the guest and events page. You can also listen to past shows on the website as well. And if you like the show and want to support us, you can do that by becoming a premium member for only $2 a month. Thanks for listening to Paranormal 411. Join.
In a world on the edge of oblivion, go to paranormal411.org for all of your paranormal, extraterrestrial, and cryptid needs. This is Jeff Reagan of the band Catalyst. Visit Paranormal 411. Click on our link on the right-hand side to listen to or purchase any of our albums on BandLab.
This long and winding road, it takes me further from my home. Where it leads me, I may never know. My only purpose is to roam, never knowing what the day may bring. Let's
All right, we are back
We're
after
back.
that
Nice quick break.
nice break. Yeah, it was nice.
I
So
got
we're
drinking some
talking
water.
with yeah, we got some water. We're talking with Constance Victoria Briggs about some moon anomalies and some aliens and all the stuff we like.
Oh yes, yeah, we're having a good old time.
We're gonna bring her back on if she's ready. And how you
Here I
doing?
am. I'm okay.
So I know you talk about. I was listening to some podcasts you were on about the
Oh,
Apollo missions,
oh,
and I know I've heard that when Neil Armstrong, I guess, was set out on the moon, stepped
mhm.
out on the moon, he said he like switched to a different channel and said they're here, they're waiting for us, and all this stuff. There's 3 of them on the edge of the crater.
Mhm.
Have you heard that?
Oh yeah. I've heard yeah, I've heard that, and I have that incident in both of my books. So, when I first heard that, I put it in my Moon Mysteries book because at that time there were, I put a lot of stories in there that couldn't be corroborated, or that I had maybe had some, not so sure about. And I would say, okay, this is a mystery. This is the story. This is what happened. Um, but it hasn't, there's no proof, but I think, this is real. Um, since that time, I have found a very interesting account, and I'll tell you all about this. So basically, what happened is when the Apollo astronauts were uh, were landing, and uh, they were coming. I don't know how to explain it. They were coming down, and there was a kind of a problem in the beginning that they ran into. They didn't just land smoothly. There was a little bit of a glitch. Excuse me. So anyway, they had to, pardon me. I'm sorry, audience.
You're fine.
I
You're
I
fine.
had muted. Okay, I really apologize.
Yeah, you're fine.
Anyway, so they had a little difficulty, and they had to apparently turn the craft very quickly. Nobody knew what had happened really, because the astronauts didn't say, but they ended up landing, as we know, and they went about their business. What happened, according to a story from a journalist named Linda Moulton Howe, who I adore,
Yes, she's very good.
she had the opportunity to talk to Neil Armstrong's best friend, who told her that Neil had said to him that when they were turning turning the limb there, they had to turn because there were spacecraft there, and they didn't want to hit them, or
Wow.
land on top of them or whatever. So they had to turn very quickly to avoid them. And that was not something that had been known, or that I think anyone had heard of publicly.
Right.
She got that interview, and she released it. And said, and he said a whole lot more. He talked about how, Neil Armstrong was depressed, and when he went to see him, it was dark in his house, and he was just not himself. But anyway, so they go, and they're turn it and turn, and they land, and they see these craft. Well, what are they going to do? Not get out, come out of their craft? I mean, these beings, whoever they were, weren't bothering them. And again, they did something I can't even imagine. They came out, according to the story. They came out, and they saw these things. So what happened is the astronauts had a secret medical line, so that if they had to report something, the audience back home would not hear them. All right.
Mhm.
So, and I think there was a delay. I guess it was the 2 minute delay thing. It was 2 minute delay. So they get on and they get on this line, and I guess it was Neil Armstrong that was talking, and he's telling Mission Control, you know what? There are there are crafts lined up, spacecraft lined up on the edge of the crater, and they're watching us. All right, and so I'm going to just read you something here. I'm going to read a little bit actually for you guys. But what happened is, even though they thought that no one was listening, someone was, and they were uh, ham radio operators who had their own VHF receiving facilities that bypassed NASA's broadcasting outlets. Maybe you guys understand that better than me, but that's what it was. Okay, so
Yes.
they heard it, and this is what they said Armstrong was saying. What is it? What the blank was it? That's all I want to know, Armstrong said. And Mission Control said, what's there? And uh, Neil Armstrong says, these babies are huge, sir, enormous. Oh, God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us, or words to that effect. So
Wow.
he reported, and was this a true story or not? Well, of course, they were shaken up.
Hmm.
And Mission Control was shaken up, but they're not going to tell the public. And we have that 2 minute delay, so they never heard it. But what happened is, I learned that many years later, a man by the name of Christopher Kraft, who is called the father of Mission Control, came forward when he was leaving NASA, and he said that yes, the astronauts had seen something while they were up there. He worked very closely with the astronauts. He was very well known. He had a reputation of inventing mission control, and he confirmed that this had happened. So he put together, or he printed, I don't know, this transcript, and here it is again. It says Neil Armstrong is speaking from the moon and saying, those are giant things. No, no, no. This is not an optical illusion. No one is going to believe this. And Mission Control is saying, what? What the blank is happening? What's wrong with you? And Neil Armstrong says, they're here under the surface. I don't know why under the
Wow.
surface. And so Mission Control says, what's there? Um, and then they were interrupted, and they say, calling Apollo 11. And the astronaut said, we saw some visitors. They were there for a while observing the instruments. Mission Control says, repeat your last information. The astronaut says, I say that there were other spaceships. They're lined up on the other side of the crater. Mission Control, repeat, repeat. And the astronauts, my hands are shaking so badly I can't do anything to film it. God, if these blank cameras have picked up anything, what then? Speaking of,
Right.
so I'm almost done. So Mission Control says, have you picked up anything? The astronaut says, I didn't have any film at hand. Uh, 3 shots of the saucers or whatever they were that were ruining the film. Mission Control says, control here. Are you on your way? Is the uproar with the UFOs over? The astronaut says, they've landed there. There they are, and they're watching us. Oh, this is interesting too, because people say we didn't go to the moon. Obviously I believe we did, but the Mission Control is asking them, even though basically they're seeing these ships, they said, the mirrors, have you set them up? The astronaut said, yes, they're right in the right place. They're in the right place, but whoever made those spaceships surely can come tomorrow and remove them over and out. That
Wow.
is a transcript that Christopher Kraft, the father of Mission Control, is said to have given before he died in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah.
Would you say is that the reason why we've never been back?
I think that might be part of it. And I say part of it because we did go back after that.
Right.
We went back several times. That was the first mission to land on the moon. We landed there several times. 12 men walked on the moon. So they kind of had to go back. I guess they felt like they weren't harmed, which
Yep.
it should be that should be noted.
Yep.
And anytime you're hearing about UFOs here and people seeing these creatures, has anyone been harmed? That's a thought. So they
Right.
weren't harmed. They had to go back because they had this huge budget. They had, and they had built all these things and they had, planned it all. And so there was no harm done to them. And who knows if they had some kind of communication going on behind the scenes? Who knows with them so that there would be no harm? I don't know. But we went back. The rumor is that it was Apollo 17 that was worn off the moon. I personally have not seen anything to corroborate that. I haven't seen any dialogue. That is rumor. But that is not that doesn't mean it's not true because a lot of stories are leaked and we didn't go back and we should have gone back because we had 2 more space missions planned and we dropped them for whatever reason. All right. So the rumor is that the Apollo 17, which was the last mission, and I have an interesting Apollo 17 story too, don't let me forget. They were the last mission, to go. So yeah, I think that was part of it. They don't want us up there. Somebody, one gentleman, I forget his name, was saying, okay, they don't want us up there because we left so much trash. We've got loads of trash up there, and where it's also, somebody's property. We don't own the moon. This is what I've learned from this whole experience is we don't own the moon. I mean, the United States, the world governments are talking about who's going to get there first and who's going to own this and who's going to do what. But it looks like there's someone already up there, somebody with their own government maybe and their own way of living. And I don't know why we think we own everything. But we don't. And they, if these stories are true, and I believe they are, then there is someone there. Sometimes I think, they were, there's that story about them throwing the ascent stage, crashing it into the moon and it reverberating and thinking,
Yes.
oh my God, were they shaking people? They're shaking people's house. And they're thinking, what the heck are they doing? All those aliens, why are they here?
That's probably why they was like, no, after that, that's it. You can't come back. You're evicted.
Right, those trashy, warring aliens.
You
Go
rang our
back to
bell.
Earth.
You said you had a good story about Apollo 17.
Yeah, so Apollo 17, if you Google this, you can find this too. Put in Apollo 17, the box structure on the moon, and maybe it'll pop up for you. So by the time the Apollo 17 went up, we had what I refer to as the little dune buggy, the lunar rover that the astronauts could move around on, which is quite interesting. So they were on this thing, the 2 of them, and as they were first let me set the stage. Again, back on Earth, we had an audience. There was an audience watching this moon mission. All right, and Walter Cronkite was the journalist that was covering it for CBS News. I guess it was CBS News. And so you've got now the camera on these guys. They're driving. The camera's on this dune buggy to see, as they're moving, what's around them. They came across something, and it was there long enough for Walter Cronkite to say, that looks like a man-made object, or words to that effect, or that looks like a real object, or something like that. And when he said it, the camera was turned and went down. Nothing could be seen. It was just, cut.
Hmm.
It was cut. The
Wow.
feed was cut. And they were offline with the astronauts for 20 minutes.
That's
All
a long
right.
time.
Right. And then Walter Cronkite comes back on. He's kind of laughing and says, oh, ha, ha, ha. It was the camera on the lunar rover taking a picture of itself. It took a picture of itself, I swear.
Wow.
And so what they had seen is this building. It was shaped like a shoebox. It was huge, and it was made up of what looked like part of what's on the floor of the moon, this moon-like material.
Mhm.
So I guess if you were looking down, if you had a camera on the moon, you may not have seen this structure at all because it sounded like it was camouflage.
Hmm.
And that apparently is what they saw. Now, what's really interesting about this is sometimes I go in after the shows and I read the readers' comments, and there have been people, more than one, that said, "Oh yeah, my mother talks about seeing a structure on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission." Yeah, there were a few of those, and I don't think that people just said, "Oh, my mother said she saw this as a hoax," you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting story, and there's a real interesting video out there. I don't have the link in front of me. It's in my Moon Mysteries book, though, and not the Galactic Moon one, but the Moon Mysteries. But if you Google box structure, Apollo 17 on the moon, it may pop up, and there have been some artist renditions of this thing. It's fascinating.
Hmm.
I had a pretty good friend of mine. I moved when I was a young man. I moved to Los Angeles for a little while and lived out there for a while. And I got to meet a guy that he was a really nice guy. He lived in La Jolla. Had a really nice fancy house right there, right on the beach and all that stuff. And um, he made his first millions um, patenting what went up in every rocket that we sent up with that was manned, and it actually told the it's a two gases or two stage rockets. It's a liquid gas and a solid, or a liquid and a solid that combine that causes the explosion. He created a thing in there that could tell before the gas could get it bad enough to kill you. So it was like a smoke detector type thing that went into every mission. Well, his thing while he worked there, and this was for NASA before it was NASA, was the radio telescope, and he radio telescoped the whole surface of the moon before before they ever even put the first man on the moon. And he talked to me about the aliens that he saw there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, and the things that he saw while being the radio telescope operator, and he said that thing could map within fractions of inches the lunar surface. And he also had a house in Rosarito, and he told me that you saw or that he saw UFOs and stuff there all the time. And he said they don't even take it out of their news broadcast, that they actually broadcast it. And I was a young guy at that time, and I was just like, you tell funny stories, And then, then as I got older and actually started looking
Right.
into this stuff, I was like, man, and what sucks is that I've lost touch with him, and this has been 20 something years ago. He may not even be around anymore because his probably in his 70s
Mm,
back then. But I'd love to pick his brain more now because of that.
right. Right. Maybe he has some memoirs or journals, or maybe he wrote a book. Because
Yeah,
there's a book in him, right? How
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of what started me on the UFO type side of things. I've been in the paranormal side my whole life. I started seeing spirits and stuff at the age of 3,
Mm,
and they'd actually wake me up 3 o'clock every single morning. Wake me up. My mom said that I'd run through the house screaming that they're chasing me again.
wow.
And it was every night. And so I've seen them my whole life. But as far as the UFOs and the aliens and stuff, I wasn't a big believer until this man come and he talked to me a lot about it. And like I said, I kind of brushed it off for many years, and then I started looking into it, and I was like, I think he was telling me the truth. So
Wow. It's so nice to talk to people like you guys about this because, I mean, I don't have very many people that I hear, in my everyday life talk like this.
yes,
It's refreshing.
yes, ma'am.
Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah. When we first started doing this show in what was it, 2012, Jason?
Yeah,
Oh
2012.
man, we got called everything,
Oh
devil
Lord.
worshippers, and
Oh no,
all
really?
yeah, oh yeah, you name it, we were called it. It was crazy.
We live in the Bible Belt.
Yeah, yeah, so,
Yeah, so my brother lives in Atlanta and we've been having some conversations and he calls that the Bible Belt. He says,
yes,
"Oh, I can't talk to everybody about this, only you."
yes,
But more and more people are getting on board. It's just going to take time. And I do think that I would guess that any world that has to come into the understanding that there is life out there, intelligent life out there, that we're not the only ones. I
mhm,
guess any world would have to go through these kind of growing pains,
yes,
you
yeah,
know, before people understand and get on board. And that may be what the hang up is, trying to let people get more and more people educated, about this thing. So, and did you hear? Have you heard about the report of the Brookings Institute? Uh, um, you know about that? Yeah, I
yes,
have that in my book. They may be still going with that. So the Brookings Institute were commissioned. They had another name at the time, but NASA commissioned them. They asked the question, well, what do we do if if these guys find aliens up there?
yeah,
Because I told you they had a clue something was going on. And
yes,
long story short, the Brookings Institute said, don't tell them. Don't tell the public, they won't be able to handle it. And
yeah,
I still
anar
think that,
yeah, they said there'll be anarchy in the streets and everything. I mean, they pretty much outlined a pretty bad scenario.
at that time they may have, you know, been right to a point, but I think now that I think people have grown, and I think we're almost there. But I have a funny story to tell you. So I'm working on this new book, and there I can't remember, but it was like I don't know, the second century AD. I don't remember the date, but it was a long time ago in our very remote past when they still had, the medieval castles and just before that time period. Anyway, so there were these UFOs in the sky over Japan. And oh, by the way, people in history documented these things. That's how I'm able to write a book and trace them back. They documented them. We
Yes,
have writings. And so one of these stories said there were UFOs in the sky over Japan, and people were so scared that they started rioting.
Mm.
wow,
The
really?
authorities, yes, the authorities had to be, called in to help them to settle down because they were just scared. They didn't know what it was. And that just brings home the fact that no matter what time in history people may have seen UFOs, that can still become so afraid that they, go a little crazy. Those people had no idea about
Yes,
anything flying. And oh,
yes,
back then they used to call them flying shields.
yeah, just flying shields.
Yeah.
Um, in the Bible, you have chariots of fire.
Yep.
Because you have many tales in the Bible as far as that goes. when the children of Israel were in the 40 years in the desert, right? They said that the glory of God shone as a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, a UFO,
Yeah, a
classic cigar
UFO.
shaped UFO.
A UFO. And there was a time where I was studying um, angels a great deal, and there was this one angel that Ezekiel had seen. This was before my UFO days. Ezekiel had seen this angel, and it said that the angel had, I don't know, several eyes and several heads and several set of wings, and it never made any sense to me.
Yes.
Okay, but now 30 years later, I get it. He was seeing a UFO. I get it, and they didn't
Yes.
have another good description.
That's it.
Um, but did you want to talk more about the Apollo missions,
Yeah. Yeah,
Jason?
absolutely.
If you have anything else, if
I
not,
didn't
we can
know.
talk about.
We-
Well, I know that there is a, what was it, remote viewer that you mentioned, Ingo Swan.
Ingo is awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, let me. Ingo Swan was, I've never remote viewed. I don't know if either of you gentlemen have, but it took me a while to kind of get what he was saying. I know about astral projection and that kind of thing. It's like, I really hadn't gotten much into this until I read his story. So basically, what happened with Ingo Swan, I'm calling up my notes because I want to share with you exactly what he saw. So basically, he was a remote viewer who was recruited by a secret agency to remote view the moon. Why would they want him to remote view the moon? Because they knew something was going on up there, right? So, so anyway, this agency took him, and he had to stay at this place. Some I don't know where he was, but he didn't know where he was either. When going in, they had covered his eyes, so he wouldn't know. But anyway, long story short, he was able to get the coordinates to remote view the moon, which essentially means somehow uh, being able to see in the mind's eye or project himself there to see what was going on. So when he got there, I'm just going to say, he wrote a book called Penetration, The Question of Extraterrestrial and Human Telepathy. And in it, he writes about the moon experience. Swan writes that he saw various structures on the dark side of the moon and witnessed human-like extraterrestrials there as well. He states that these beings had the ability to breathe on the moon. He witnessed them working on the moon and digging. Swan claimed to have seen not only moon dwellers, but buildings, structures, factories, and roads. He mentioned seeing workers that appeared to be robotic, putting together what appeared to be a laser mechanism. During his remote viewing session, the extraterrestrials became aware of his presence and went after him. Startled, he stopped the session and theoretically left the moon. Some of the beings followed him back to Earth, frightening Swan, who stayed hidden for weeks after. Some believe that what Swan witnessed during his remote viewing is directly connected to the reason that the U.S. stopped going to the moon.
Really? Now that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about Ingo, and I've listened to him on. He was on Coast to Coast, a few times before and stuff back in the Art Bell days and stuff, and I find remote viewing pretty fascinating.
Is that the guys that supposedly have looked into a window and they seen him, although he was astroplaning there, but yet they seen him?
Yeah, Ingo Swann was pretty fascinating because he was part of that government program
Right.
when they first started doing it, when when it came out, and people got all upset because they were doing it. But but yeah, he had some pretty psychic tendencies anyway, and I think he is one of the people who helped actually start the whole program and stuff like that for remote viewing.
He was the best remote viewer in the world during his time. I'm showing here that he was born in 1933 and he passed away at 2013, and that was really a great loss. But do you know that it was Swan who located the a ring around Jupiter. Jupiter has a ring or a couple, I think, or I don't know, one or two. Anyway, it was Swan that first discovered that. Did you know that? And
Really?
yes, and that
Wow.
happened before his experience with the moon, which may be one reason they wanted him, because they trusted that he knew what he was talking about, because he discovered it before the scientists did through remote viewing.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
So,
That's
so take a look at that and then take a look at what he wrote about the moon, you know,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic.
very
Wow.
exciting. So also regarding the astronauts, I wanted to say that whether or not someone is watching us from the moon, it looks more and more like they are, because each of the Apollo missions were followed by a UFO. Each of those missions either saw weird bright lights that they couldn't identify, or a UFO, a ship.
Yeah.
A couple of them almost had crashes with one
Hmm.
with them. So I feel like, yeah, they knew they were coming. When they were parked on the surface of the crater up there, they knew they were coming and they were watching them. And I think that they were watching them out of curiosity, not of any, malintent. They were
Yeah.
just curious. And they knew probably it was their humanity's first time leaving Earth and landing on another planetary object. And they were curious. And in fact, there was one man, his name was Maurice Chatelain, and he wrote a book um, where he talked about how other mission control, there were different governments or of different countries watching, and one of them was saying that it looked more to them that they were watching to see if the astronauts landed safely or
Okay.
not, as opposed to having some malintent, you know. So I thought that was an interesting take on it.
That is pretty interesting.
Hmm.
There are some also some like with the Apollo 13 mission, there is a rumor that the mission was saved due to extraterrestrial intervention, and that was something that wasn't made public. Um, that the extraterrestrials were the ones to help them to get back home after Apollo 13 failed, having some sort of problem. I can't remember what it was on their mission. And then there is, excuse me, another mission. It may have been Apollo 15, where, oh, excuse me, I know it was Apollo 10. Silly me. So Apollo 10 was the rehearsal. You could say rehearsal for Apollo 11. So the Apollo 10 astronauts had to get as close. They had to go up and get as close to the lunar surface, as they could to practice.
Hmm.
So the um, the lunar module left the command module with the two astronauts, and they were going down as close as they could, but then they had a problem and they got stuck in space and they couldn't get back to the command module. And of course, they would have, died out there.
Yeah.
And they were frantically contacting mission control, asking what can they do. They needed help. They're calling the command module, saying, we need help. The lock It's stuck, it's jammed, and things stopped working in the ship. They had a problem. So one of the astronauts saw something move past the window or the little cabin porthole or whatever of the lunar module. And soon after it moved, he saw that then things began working inside.
Oh wow.
And right, and so they told Mission Control, well, everything seems to be working now. And Mission Control told them, okay, continue, with the mission. But when they went back to, when they got back home, they were told not to talk about it. So that was leaked. That was something that was leaked. Other things that where whistleblowers came forward and talked about too was pictures in NASA. I'm sure you've heard about them that were had buildings that were erased. One of the whistleblowers. Forgive me, so many people I can't remember all their names. That's why I write them in books.
Yeah, right.
One of the whistleblowers came forward and said, "Yeah, I walked in. I saw something I don't think I was supposed to, and it was them Xing out um, buildings on
I've
the
heard
surface."
that. I think I've heard an interview with that guy. Because
Ken something. Yeah, I can't remember.
yeah, I think I heard an interview with that guy and him talking about that, about walking in while they were in the process of editing photos,
Hmm.
slides and stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's it's funny how, they don't think that at some point somebody's going to say something.
Right. Well, yeah, they don't expect it. And also, there was another account where someone witnessed the tossing of photos, and this person actually went and dug them out of the trash. Mhm. Oh
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's
And then it was one kind of a funny story. Is it was either Apollo 8 or Apollo 9. I think it was no Apollo 7 or Apollo 8 that went up. We had a lot of pre-flights before Apollo 11. They had to work on a whole lot of stuff out there, and the first one we lost people, so they were very, very, very careful. But in this one, they went up and they finally got up into space just above Earth there, and they saw a UFO. These guys, these astronauts, and they did take some pictures. This thing was not circular; it was white and had oh, I don't know. Some people said it looked kind of angelic, but not really. It's hard to explain it, but it was a strange shape, this thing. They took pictures of it, but they didn't want to share it with the public. So they tried to X this out, but they didn't have that technology yet, and they weren't using markers, so they used duct tape, you know. Yeah, they used duct tape, and you can actually Google that too. Um, Astronauts duct tape UFO and go to Google Images. I bet you'll find it because there was one that slipped through. So you've got images of the duct tape covering it, but you've got that one image of the UFO. True story. That one's true. I mean, you could see it. Yeah.
wow.
So, regarding whether or not there's someone living in the moon. Now, this is very interesting, I think. I'm beginning to um, I wonder if a lot of the planetary bodies in our solar system, well, we've got two gas giants, but um, are they some of the moons and others, are they hollow? Because the idea with the moon is just like the Zulu people said, and just like the Soviet scientists said, this thing has something in it, but it was hollowed out. All right. It has areas in there. I mean, it reverberated for a reason. We all know the moon rang like a bell. Well, it didn't sound like a bell, it reverberated.
Yep.
And scientists from NASA came forward in a press conference and said, it was reverberating. We don't know why it was reverberating. It would mean that it's hollow. And then they backtracked. on
Yeah.
that. Well, the moon can't be hollow. Well, apparently you're too late. You already put it out there. You can't erase it. Okay.
Right.
People have been talking about it forever. But if the moon is hollow and the moon is populated, the chances are that there's someone inside it. And they may have structures on the moon because they have the means to go outside of the hollow moon and come back in. Some of the astronauts predicted that some of the craters were hollow. I mean, hollow. The craters were bottomless. And there have been reports of ships entering and exiting craters. So it could very well be a civilization living in there.
Yep.
One of the things that I did with my Galactic Moon book is I'm a big Star Trek fan, and they had in the 1960s in that show they had a feature episode where it was titled "The Moon, not the Moon, the Earth is Hollow, and I have touched the sky." One of my favorite episodes. And what was interesting about it is that Captain Kirk and his team had to intervene when there was an asteroid traveling across the universe and it was going to collide with one of the Federation planets. So they had to do something about this asteroid. So what do? They beam over, of course, right? Isn't that what they always did? They
Right.
beamed over. But when
Don't
they
have
got
a red
on,
shirt on. You're dead. No.
right?
Uh,
When they got over there, though, they learned pretty quickly that this was not a normal asteroid. This was an artificial structure. It was a ship designed to look like an asteroid. And they could see immediately that there were structures on top, but the ship inside, they went down, they were escorted down by beings, and it was hollow. And there was a civilization in there that had, just like this whole moon story, that had been traveling across the universe, and their son or something was dying, so they had gotten in the ship and they were escaping, which is a theory I forgot to say that could be the civilization was maybe escaping, and it's almost identical to that. And I
yeah.
wonder if Roddenberry knew something and he put that in there because not only are they saying that the moon is hollow and someone may be inside, but they're saying that Mars's Phobos may be hollow. The Earth may be hollow, which is a whole other show. I'd love to come on and talk about that. One of my
Yes.
favorite subjects.
I
The
love
Earth
Hollow
may be
Earth.
hollow, although hardly anybody's going to believe that.
I love
It's
the
going to,
Hollow Earth theory. It's
oh
a
my
good theory.
God.
Yes.
So what if that's a thing? Okay.
Yep.
What if there are planetary bodies, that are mostly, many of them are hollow.
Yes.
And somebody said that we're living inside out, that we should be inside the earth, that most likely, if the reason that these planetary objects are hollow is because are hollow and beings are inside, is because being inside protects them from natural disasters. On
Yep.
the moon, it would have protected them from meteorites and
Yep.
bombarded and all of that. Here, if there is an inner Earth civilization, as I'm investigating,
Mhm.
that would be the same thing because the story is that there's an inner Earth civilization as has been seen by people. I
Mhm.
won't get into that detail, but it has been seen. And they sent a message back to us, and they said that they have continued with their living in technology there, whereas here we've been interrupted on the
Secret
top
set.
because of natural disasters.
Yep. Well, the
You know,
Hopi, I was talking about them earlier, and the Hopi talked about during the last, cataclysm, the last flood and everything, that the ant people came and got them, brought them underground for a while till it was safe to come back above ground. And when it was safe, they brought them back above ground. And the Hopi
okay,
have that's one of their Hopi prophecies that they talk about. Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. So there's the civilization, they call them the ant people.
I've heard of the ant people. I don't know that much about them. I can't remember if they actually look like ants or do they look like ants? Are they a kind of insectoid?
I don't think that they did, but I don't think that they did. I
Okay,
just
all
think
right.
that they called them that because they lived under the ground like ants do.
Okay, all right. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's an interesting
Yes.
theory. The moon may be hollow with people living inside. They may have their own nation, and all of that. The moon may be owned by someone else, and the other planetary bodies may be hollow as well, with beings living on the inside.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, like you was just talking about. If you live in the planet or inside whatever, you are protected against natural disasters, floods, anything that's going to happen. You're not going to be affected by it. And so, and for me, it makes a lot of sense because over by where you are, pretty close, is where the Tic Tac incident happened, off the Nimitz and all that. And then over here
Hmm.
on the East Coast, we had the same thing that happened over here. And if you see these UFOs are constantly going into the water, and so they are traveling from space and then down into the oceans for whatever reason. And could that be an entrance to, wherever they're actually living?
Agreed. Agreed. I actually, it's funny you should say that. As I talk about that in my book, I talk about the inner Earth, and I talk about the possibility that when we're seeing some of those UFOs go inside of the water, are there areas underneath that they may be able to go into a tunnel or caravan, or yeah, tunnel area,
Mhm.
um, where they're able to enter the inner Earth. Oh, there is a person. Excuse me if I look a little distracted. It's because I noticed that my battery is dying on my computer, and
Oh,
I've
no.
just called for help. Don't worry. I don't think it's gonna. Yeah. So that's what I was doing, calling for help. Um, so no, there is a person who had a trip on a ship, he says, and he actually did ride on a USO that entered through a cavern and took him to a city. I have that in my new book. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and, out there where you live in California, they've got Mount Shasta, and they talk about UFOs and stuff like that constantly being seen coming to and from in and out of Mount Shasta all the time, and that's been talked about for hundreds of years, and the
Yeah,
indigenous people even talked about it,
yeah,
because
yeah.
they thought Mount Shasta was they said it was a sacred place.
Guys, why do you think we don't have more interest, or even what we used to call a town hall meeting? Well, we can do the town hall meetings on Zoom, but don't you think for things like Mount Shasta and seeing UFOs leaving and all of this, that people should be talking about it and trying to figure out
Yes.
what in the world is going on? I mean,
Yes.
wouldn't you be worried that, maybe it'll affect your life somehow? You
Yes.
know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny, and maybe it's because they've put, the conspiracy and all these, things on talking like this, where people are like, "Well, I don't want to be seen as a nutcase for talking about stuff like this," and if that's what it is, I don't know, but I guess that's why we try to do shows like this, try to inform people.
I always say, once you reach a certain age, who really cares what people think,
Yes,
right? You know,
Right.
absolutely.
we're not going to. I tell my husband, "Oh, we're not going to be here in 100 years. Who cares what people think?" And he says,
That's
"Well,
right.
nobody's going to care what they think next year." So, you
Wait 5
know,
minutes.
right? Yeah.
So we got about 2 minutes
Mm.
left. Now's the time for you to promote yourself.
Yeah, give out all your information where people can find you, your
Yeah,
books and everything.
books,
Yes,
everything.
absolutely.
Thank you. So my books can be found on Amazon like most everything else. And or you can try Adventures Unlimited Press. Those are the ancient alien people. David Hatcher Childress owns that, and you can get it there if Amazon doesn't have it, or probably any other bookstore that you see online. Um, I am on Facebook. There is Constance Victoria Briggs page. You'll see a big Saturn up there. That would be me. I have a Moon Mysteries page where I'm putting stuff up about the moon all the time. I can be reached through my website at constancevictoriabriggs.com, www.constancevictoriabriggs.com. You can email me there if you have questions. I am on Instagram and TikTok. TikTok, yes. It's all new for me. Obviously, I don't even have the word right. The TikTok or Tic Tac. I'm getting them confused all the time.
Well, I think
My
now
kid,
it's
X.
Yeah, it's X now.
It's X.
X now. My kids
Oh,
put
that's
me on.
Twitter.
Oh,
That's Twitter. Yeah, I got to
Okay.
get that going. But yeah, you can go through my website and email me. It's not hard to find.
Well, it's been nice talking with you, and maybe when you get your book done, this next book you're doing, we can have you back on and talk about it.
Yeah, I would love to come on and talk about it. There's
Yes.
some interesting topics in that one. Yeah, I'll send you an email about it.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe we could do one about the inner earth too, because
Yes.
I love that inner earth stuff.
I would love it. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming on. We enjoyed having you on, and this conversation was excellent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me talk, giving me a
Yes,
venue
ma'am.
to talk.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, that's what we, Jason and I, when we decided to do this show, that's what it was. It was, it's our guest show. You know, we might ask a few questions, but it's your show to do what talk about what you want to talk about. So
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, audience.
thank
All
you.
right.
You have a good night. Have a good weekend.
And I'll
Thank
send you
you.
I'll send you the link to the radio version as soon as I get it put up.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. That was Constance Victoria Briggs with some amazing stories.
Yeah, that was some good stories, wasn't it?
It was.
We had a really good conversation.
Yeah.
I think got in depth in a bunch of stuff. We did talk about her book, The Moon's Galactic History, but she has plenty of other books, right?
Oh, yeah.
So definitely check her out. Check out her website. Go and see her on Facebook and follow her
Yes. Follow her.
and read those books.
You're cutting out of the.
I
There you
am-
go.
I'm leaving.
Roger, you got anything you want to add? No.
What?
No.
What do you think
What do you
about
think
the
about
moon?
it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so deep of a thing there to get at. Like, yeah, who knows what's up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if we've seen the things, of course, there is pictures, like she said, the duct tape pictures. I brung it up here on the phone. There is a object right there, and there was duct tape next to it, like they're trying to hide it.
That's funny, isn't it? Duct tape pictures. That's insane.
And also, too, like what we was talking before the show, there is a bridge up there. There
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, like we was talking about looks like a satellite dish.
right, and there's an antenna.
Antenna. Yeah.
And the antenna is like, what, like 200 mile
Yeah.
high or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think it's amazing.
It is.
But this was a great show. I had a great time. Everybody have a good night, good weekend.
Hey, remember, if you're hungry,
Oh man, if you're hungry, you need to go visit Eddie and Susan, Legends and Lore Pizzeria in Madisonville.
Let's go, guys.
It's a great place.
yeah, it is.
He's,
And if you want to hear some good music,
oh man, need to listen to Catalyst. If you got to hear us during that break, that awesome song, that's Catalyst.
my favorite song.
That's Jason's favorite song. That's why he makes sure he plays it
Every time.
So
And remember, we're on the radio right now.
right now, Yes, WDJYFM.com. You could listen to our what shows playing.
Um,
You know, do you remember?
Last week's?
I do. It's I can't think of what I put.
Hey,
up
guess
there.
what? It's a mystery.
It's about UFOs.
Go online and WDJYFM and listen to it. That's what I say. Yeah. Join us.
If you missed any of this, the first half of this show, it will be playing next week on WDJY FM Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Everybody have a good night.
Join them.
Join us. Thank all the premium members. We thank the premium members.
Yes, we want to thank all of our premium members.
And we do have a book.
Yep. East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore.
Amazon. You can get it.
Yes. 5-star rated.
5 stars.
Hey, I'm not supposed to tell everybody, but it's about to have a version 2.
Oh, yeah.
With the new cover.
Oh
yeah. Mount.
All right. We may not have a show next week because David's going to be in California.
Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna have to do a reset next week, so I won't be around. I'm gonna fall off the edge of the earth for a minute.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks everybody. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.